The imperial chamber stretched before them like a cathedral of chrome and starlight. Jasmine kept her breathing steady as she walked the luminous pathway, flanked by creatures that could tear her apart with a casual swipe. On her left prowled Krath, a juvenile Vexian whose obsidian scales still bore the iridescence of youth. On her right padded Saria, a young Tharkon whose silver fur hadn't yet darkened to the battle gray of adulthood. They were children by the standards of their species. Predators, yes, apex killers whose ancestors had dominated their worlds for millennia. But children nonetheless, and they had chosen her. Emperor Zarthon sat upon the stellar throne, his 4 arms folded across his armored thorax. The Krellian monarch had ruled the Galactic Coalition for 3 centuries, and his compound eyes reflected Jasmine's approach with cold calculation. Around the chamber, representatives from 100 worlds watched in silence. This was unprecedented. Humans had only joined the coalition 5 years ago, and already one stood before the Emperor himself. But it wasn't Jasmine who had demanded this audience. Human. Zarthon's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. You stand accused of corrupting the youth of warrior species, of spreading dangerous ideologies that undermine the natural order. Jasmine stopped at the designated mark, 20 meters from the throne. Krath and Saria stopped with her, their bodies tense and ready. She could feel their determination radiating like heat. Your Majesty, she began, but a low growl from Krath interrupted her. The young Vexian stepped forward, his tail lashing. The human speaks for us. A ripple of shock passed through the assembled delegates. Saria moved to Krath's side, her fangs bared in what humans might mistake for aggression, but Jasmine recognized as protective solidarity. She speaks for us, the Tharkon cub repeated. Emperor Zarthon's mandibles clicked, a sound of irritation. You are juveniles. You do not yet understand the complexities. We understand enough, Krath interrupted, a breach of protocol so severe that several guards moved forward. But they stopped when Saria released a warning growl that echoed through the chamber. Jasmine's heart hammered. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to defend herself, to explain her teaching methods, to assure the coalition that humanity posed no threat to established order. But Krath and Saria had other ideas. For 10,000 cycles, Krath continued, his voice gaining strength, our kinds have been told that strength is all that matters, that mercy is weakness, that compassion is a flaw to be purged. His scales rippled with emotion. But the human showed us something different. Saria nodded, her silver eyes fixed on the Emperor. She showed us that Earth, a death world by any measure, produced a species that conquered not through claws or venom, but through cooperation. They were prey animals who became predators through intelligence and unity. Jasmine wanted to speak to soften their words, but she recognized this moment wasn't hers to control. These young beings had found their voices and she would not silence them. The human didn't teach us to be weak, Krath said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. She taught us to be strong in ways our elders refused to acknowledge. When the Draxian bullies came for the smaller students, it was human strategy that helped us defend them without bloodshed. When the station's life support failed in Sector 7, it was human problem-solving that saved 200 lives. A Draxian delegate rose from his seat, his crest flaring red. This is exactly the corruption we warned about. Teaching predator species to protect prey to value all life equally, it goes against nature itself. Nature? Jasmine finally spoke, her voice quiet but carrying clearly through the chamber. Nature also gave humans weak, slow, fragile humans the ability to throw rocks with precision, to run prey to exhaustion, to cooperate in ways that made us the dominant species on a planet, trying to kill us at every turn. She gestured to her young companions. These cubs are the future of the coalition. They're brilliant, brave, and yes, they're learning that there are different kinds of strength. Is that really so threatening? Emperor Zarthon was silent for a long moment. His eyes studied the 3 of them, human, Vexian, and Tharkon standing united. Finally he spoke. What you teach is dangerous, human. It threatens the power structures that have maintained order for millennia. Good, Saria said simply, and gasps echoed through the chamber. Krath nodded. The old order treated us as weapons to be aimed. The human treats us as people with choices. And what happens? The Emperor asked, his voice sharp. When those choices lead to chaos. When predator species refuse their roles as protectors and enforcers. Jasmine met his gaze steadily. Then they become something better. They become what humanity became. Survivors who chose cooperation over domination, innovation over intimidation. Your Majesty, Earth didn't produce the strongest species or the fastest or the most heavily armed. We produced a species that looked at the stars and said, we belong there too, even though everything about us suggested we should have stayed hiding in caves. We want that future, Krath said. Not the one where we're valued only for our ability to kill. The Emperor's mandibles worked silently. Around them, the chamber had gone utterly quiet. Jasmine could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment. The coalition had existed for 10,000 years, built on rigid hierarchies and clearly defined roles. And here stood three beings, one human, two predator cubs, suggesting there might be another way. Finally, Zarthon's voice rang out. The human will continue her work. But know this, you will be watched. And if your methods produce weakness, if they endanger the coalition, they won't, Jasmine said firmly, because we're not teaching weakness. We're teaching humanity, and humanity has never been about being weak. As they turned to leave, Saria pressed her shoulder against Jasmine's side, a gesture of trust among Tharkons. Krath's tail wrapped briefly around her wrist. They walked together down the luminous pathway, predator cubs and their human teacher, while the galaxy watched and wondered what would come next. Behind them, Emperor Zarthon watched them go, his ancient mind contemplating an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps the humans, those soft, weak newcomers, understood something about strength that the coalition had forgotten, and perhaps these cubs, with their fierce loyalty to a fragile teacher, were the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before, a future where predators chose to be more than their instincts demanded. The end.